If you ever look around at the state of the world and you think to yourself, that is so Fiat, it's because you're right.
Next, we have How Fiat Ruins Everything by Bitcoin educator and author Jimmy Song. Give Jimmy a big round of applause, everyone.
All right, how's everybody doing? I know it's like, late afternoon. I hate this slot because everyone tends to fall asleep and stuff. So just a brief thing, just to humor me. Please, everybody stand up. Let's just do a little bit of stretching, right? Just a little bit. I don't know if you feel, that doldrums coming, just stretch out. Maybe hug a neighbor, I don't know, high five somebody, do something. Get the blood pumping a little bit, because I want to talk about this topic, this very important topic of how Fiat ruins absolutely everything. Now, I suspect to some degree that I'm preaching to the choir here. I think most of you believe that Fiat ruins everything. So instead of necessarily making an argument towards it, I'm going to show you some of the effects that Fiat has in the economy and all the ways in which it corrupts all that is good and pure. So none of the discussion around Fiat would make any sense without sort of diving into some of the essential problems. The first of which is cronyism. When you have the ability to print money, you have the ability to just sort of hire people to do kind of nothing. And who are you going to hire, right? You're going to hire people that you want to be in the right position. And that means that there's a lot of sort of incompetent people that are in charge of all kinds of random things. And that means that cronyism takes on a much bigger role in a Fiat system. Now, that's not necessarily the exclusive to Fiat. Under sound money, you can have cronyism too. But in order to fund cronyism, you have to tax people explicitly, and you do too much of that, you're going to get revolution. Under Fiat money, it's going to be a lot easier to sort of get that under the rug, because you can have cronyism through stealth taxation, through inflation, through theft of everybody else's value. The other thing that Fiat money does is it adds a lot more corruption. Now, again, this is not exclusive to the domain of Fiat money. But when you have this giant prize of newly printed money, you're going to have a lot more people able to be bribed and so on. If you have a civil servant job and you have the ability to, grant certain amounts of money or government contracts or whatever, you're going to be wined and dined. And in more bribery acceptable countries, you're going to get explicit bribes. But even in places like Western Europe or the United States, you still have bribes. They're just paid afterwards, right? After you leave government service, you get jobs paying $500,000 to be at a think tank or as a consultant for a big oil company or something like that. That's what happens. And all of this points out that what you have are Cantillon effects that enable all of this corruption. And corruption is exactly what it is. It's corrupting almost everything. And the real reason why all of this sort of ruins everything else is because of politics. It ruins everything. When's the last time you said, you know what would make this widget work better? Why don't we just add some politics to it, right? Like that no one ever says that. Politics doesn't add anything. It actually makes it more, adds a lot more friction to everything. And unfortunately, this is what fiat money does to everything, because it makes everything political. It's a hyper-politicization of all of society. And the reason for that is because it changes the incentives around everything. It's no longer about what value you're providing to the market. Instead, it becomes way more political. It's about getting favors from this person and sort of working your way up that status game of politics, that zero-sum status game. And some of these incentives that are distorted is, first of all, the distortion of prices. Prices are an important part of the economy because it tells you when something is expensive, it brings a lot more people to produce some of that good. And if something is discounted, then people find other uses for that good for various other purposes in the economy. But when you distort prices, especially through newly printed money, what ends up happening is that prices kind of go out of whack, right? When you have the US government pay for lots and lots of weapons, well, you get a lot more weapons, basically, that nobody, other than the US government gets to have. That distortion of prices means that you get also a decreased quality for subsidized products. There are all sorts of products which have sort of like government contracts and so on, which make it so that the quality of them isn't very good. I know at least in the US, the quality of roads is horrible. And it's because these companies that are building the roads, they have guaranteed government contracts. They don't have to compete in the market. Once you have fiat money funding all of this stuff, you get subsidized products that get worse and worse. I mean, healthcare in the US, healthcare in Western Europe, healthcare pretty much anywhere where government steps in. Think about education. Think about any of this stuff. It ends up making everything worse because there's a guarantee. You don't have to compete in the market. And ultimately, this means that there's a lot more rent-seeking opportunity. And I want to talk about rent-seeking a little bit. And if you're not familiar with what rent-seeking is, it's the ability to tax a transaction. It's the ability to tax a transaction without adding any value. That means that you're just sort of sitting in the middle. And by the virtue of your political position, you get to collect rents on something rather than the value that you're providing to the market. And there's a lot of that in a fiat economy because, well, there's the ultimate rent-seeking endeavor, which is printing money. And you can sit in the middle somewhere and collect lots and lots of rent. And again, this brings it back to politics. Everything becomes way more political because if you can get one of these positions that let you rent seek, well, that's going to be generally a lot easier than competing in the market. Think about like what it takes to succeed in the market. You have to find product market fit. You have to sort of continuously innovate, or else a competitor might come in and destroy you, basically. You have to constantly think about what the customer wants. But when it's a rent-seeking job, you don't have to care because you have guarantees. You have a consumer guarantee because they're able to pay you with fiat money. And if that sounds unfair, it is, right? It definitely is. And getting into these positions of rent-seeking is often not easy. In fact, there's a significant amount of gatekeeping. And sort of the poster boy for me of rent-seeking is this guy, right? Hunter Biden. Absolutely no skills whatsoever. How, this guy knows nothing about energy. Somehow he's on the board of directors of a Ukrainian energy company, right? Like, how did that happen? How did that happen? This is a rent seeker, right? And the only reason he gets to be a rent seeker is because he happens to be the president's son. He has no skills whatsoever. He provides no value to anybody other than his political standing, right? Now, Hunter is sort of exceptional because there aren't that many sons of the presidents of the United States. There just aren't. And he happens to have that particular position. But there's lots of other rent-seeking in the economy. And it has this effect of draining a lot of talent. And what I mean by that is because these rent-seeking positions are, first of all, very, very much guaranteed. You always have a customer. So you don't have to compete in the market. There's less uncertainty about it. So people want it. And it's generally going to be easier once you get into those positions. And if you're in those positions, I mean, say like an executive at Goldman Sachs, you're going to make a tremendous amount of money for providing little, if any, value. And that means that the productive people become the biggest leeches. Think about the last 50 years and where the best and the brightest people, like the people that graduate from the Ivy League universities, the people that, the people that are really, really smart, where are they going? Are they going and building new rocket ships to Mars? No. Where are they going? They're going to Wall Street. They're going and becoming investment bankers, right? The ultimate rent-seeking job. And it's not because they have this passion for banking. It's because this pays the most. And they've done the mental calculation. The amount of effort that I put in versus the amount of money that I'm going to get out, along with the certainty of those positions, well, I mean, this is clearly the way to go. And instead of contributing to society, they are actually stealing from society by becoming rent seekers. So you take the most productive people and you turn them into the biggest leeches. It feels like a cheat code to life, right? And it kind of is for the people that can do it. Because if you are Hunter Biden, you have no discernible skills whatsoever other than being the president's son, well, you can be a complete degenerate, and it's okay, right? You can do things that don't provide value to anybody, and you can still live a life of pleasure, I guess, of an ancient Epicurean, eat, drink, and be merry. You can do that. It feels like a cheat code. But that also means that that means that civilization is screwed. It comes at the cost of civilization crumbling. Because if you take the most productive people and turn them into the biggest leeches, what's going to happen? Civilization itself is where all of this value is being extracted, and it's crumbling. And how that happens is through the ruination of merit. You take merit, which is a very much a market process. Whoever fulfills your needs the best way, whether it's faster, quicker, or cheaper, or with more security or robustness, that's sort of washed away in fiat money. And here's how that happens. First, political connectedness becomes more central than the value provided. And you can kind of see that a lot in the economy today. A lot of companies make kind of terrible products, but they're very politically connected, so they're continued to be allowed to exist. There's also a significant amount of gatekeeping. And you can kind of understand why, because these rent-seeking jobs, they don't require any talent. But there's a lot of people that want to get in, so you have to have some gate to filter those people. And generally, the people that get in are the politically connected. You might get in because of extraordinary luck, but that seems to be the exception. The people that get in are the ones that have political connections. And once you're in, it's a political game where you maintain your position politically rather than providing value to the market. And that means that merit, the ability to fulfill the market's desires, the market's wants, does not matter. It's how politically connected you are. And that increased gatekeeping you can kind of see in all of these industries. Investment banking, it is very difficult to get into that industry. It is extremely difficult to even get your foot in the door. Why? Because the prize is so big. If you can do 500x leverage and make hundreds of millions of dollars a year, of course everyone's going to want to do it. So they make it purposefully very, very difficult to get in, unless you happen to know somebody there. If you happen to be the vice president's son of Morgan Stanley or something like that, of course you're going to get an opportunity to get in. Similar thing with Hollywood, right? How hard is it to become an actor in Hollywood? There are hundreds of thousands of people that would love to become something like an actor or a director or something like that. but there's a significant amount of gatekeeping again. And again, if you happen to be the son of like some famous director, you're going to have a much easier time. It becomes very much Fiat-like. Modern art. How hard is it to break into the art industry, right, and become a famous artist? It's extremely difficult. But once you're in, you're really in, and your signature sells for a lot of money. Even unions, especially public employee unions, it's extremely hard to get into these things, these jobs, and generally the people that have the personal connections are going to have a much easier time. Everything is political. Even becoming a politician is about what personal connections you have. If you happen to be the son or daughter of another famous politician, you have a much easier time getting in than somebody who has good ideas, but doesn't necessarily have a name. And you can see this increased gatekeeping because all of these industries, they're trending older, right? Like, think about the Hollywood stars, right? Like, Tom Cruise is still making movies, right? Harrison Ford is still making movies. These are people that were famous in the 80s, right? Or maybe some in the 70s. It's crazy. Why? Because these people don't want to give up their cushy rent-seeking positions. They don't want to, so they never release it. And everybody the people in power want to keep it, so they just keep trending older. And that means a lack of new ideas, a lack of a lot of things. Now, I've been spending some time in Rome, and this is one of my favorite pieces of art, and this is La Pietà by Michelangelo. And it's one of the most famous pieces of Western art ever. It has one thing that is fairly unique to it, and it is known as the only art piece by Michelangelo that was actually signed. And you can see it here. It's on the sash of Mary, and you can see that he signed it. Thing is, it wasn't there originally. He was 24 years old when he made this sculpture, so nobody really knew who he was. And he overheard some people talking about this sculpture, and they attributed it to some other artist. And he was really angry, so that night he went in and secretly carved in his name into the sash of Mary. Now, the reason why he never signed another piece of art again was because he regretted that action. He realized that he didn't want people to like stuff because of his signature. He wanted his art to speak for itself. And really, that's what everything about merit is about. It's about earning your fit with the market, right? Instead, you can kind of see the degeneracy of this sort of thinking where you want your art, you want your product to speak for itself with stuff like this. This is a Picasso, and if it didn't have that signature of Picasso, would any of you want to hang this? Would you want to decorate in your place? The reason why it's valuable is because of his signature. The reason why it's valuable is because he happened to play the right political game and he became famous. And as a result, anything signed with Picasso is worth millions of dollars. This is the Fiat mentality. This is why art, it doesn't speak for itself anymore. Now you have to know the backstory of the artist and all the influences and stuff like that. It doesn't speak for itself. And it isn't just individuals that benefit from this rent-seeking, it's also companies. Think about all of these industries: defense contractors, car manufacturers, airlines, utilities, banks. When's the last time you saw any innovation out of any of these places? You haven't. You haven't. Because all of them are Fiat industries. They're constantly rent-seeking. And again, it's all about politics. They're very good at keeping their position through political games that they get to play. So they're constantly subsidized in many ways. And all of the government subsidies that come to them allow them to keep that position. It's fiat money that ultimately keeps them in the place that they are. And this ruins merit because it adds way more rent seekers into the economy as companies. And it causes sort of like a zombification. Think about a couple of companies that used to be very innovative, IBM and GE, right? IBM like made the first personal computer. GE was created by Edison. They used to make all of these products. They're zombie companies now. The reason they're surviving is because of government subsidies of one form or another. And that means that there's stagnation because these companies don't go away. They're propped up by fiat money. And you get complete stagnation in a lot of these industries that would otherwise have new stuff coming out. That means a regression of civilization. And I say regression because it doesn't just stay the same, it goes backwards. Here is the last commercial plane that was sort of like a leap of technology, right? This is a Concorde. And it stopped operating about 20 years ago, 2003. It's already been 20 years since the Concorde last flew. And it was innovative in that it got you from New York to London in like 3 hours instead of the normal 6 or 7. The reason why we haven't had new plane designs and things come up is because there are really only 2 airplane manufacturers left in the world today, commercial airline manufacturers. It's just Boeing and Airbus. They don't have any competition. Here's another one where we're seeing some regression. This is a dishwasher. How long does your dishwasher take to wash the dishes right now? Now, if you know anything about dishwashers, it takes about 3 hours, right, to wash your dishes. Back in the 60s, it took 45 minutes, and it cleaned it perfectly. So what the hell happened? Why did it take 45 minutes in the 60s, and now it's 3 hours? Well, there's all sorts of regulations, right? So limits on the amount of water that a dishwasher can use. The actual cleaning agent has to be approved by government entities and so on. We've gone backwards. We're getting regression on these technologies. Think about Hollywood. When's the last time they did anything original, right? Like, how many more Spider-Man movies can we have? It's kind of ridiculous. They don't innovate anything. I was talking to a couple of people yesterday, and they're like, yeah, there hasn't been like really good movies or anything original in Hollywood since like 2003, right? Like, Matrix, Fight Club, maybe those are pretty innovative, but have you seen anything since that's like not a derivative of something else? We're going backwards. And we get a lot of fiat industries. And these fiat industries don't want any competition because that allows them to survive and keep their rent-seeking positions. And they like regulation. They like additional compliance costs because it keeps competitors out. And that means that they have zero reason to innovate because the government will protect them. And they will get subsidized through fiat money. And they keep their positions by default. In a sense, they're profoundly conservative in the truest meaning of that word. They want to conserve their position. That's their purpose, politically, to keep their rent-seeking position. That's the incentive that they have. Now, bring up this picture. This is what I believe to be the last sort of like quantum leap that mankind has made, right? It's 1969, man landed on the moon. I think we've been going backwards since then. I showed you the example of, the Concorde and the dishwasher. We've been going backwards. And we've been going backwards because of fiat money. It's not a coincidence that this happened in 1969. Nixon suspended the gold standard in 1971, about 2 years after this. And we've been going backwards ever since. Because if you think about it, all the sort of technological innovations since then are entirely inward-looking. It's all navel-gazing. Oh, you have an app now that you can, I don't know, become a monkey in a video chat with somebody else. Like, is that really an innovation? Is that really a forward leap? This was the last time we actually pushed forward on the frontier. This is the last time we actually made something happen. And we haven't gone past this. Isn't that a little scary? That means that civilization is on the decline. The thing about fiat money is that it encourages sort of like an entitlement mindset, because if everything is sort of profoundly conservative, it's all about conserving your position. You feel like you have a right to that position. And the way you enforce that right is through politics. So that this becomes a chief value. It is about playing that political game, and that's become way more important than actually fulfilling the needs of the market. And this is why so many companies you see today are so into, diversity, ESG, and things like that, because they have to serve their real master, and it's fiat money. And it's all about conserving their position in the market and conserving their rent-seeking position. They need to keep that there. And they think they have a right to it because it's always kind of been there. But all of it comes through theft. All of it comes through inflation. All of it comes through the extraction of value from the rest of society. Thankfully, Bitcoin fixes this. Bitcoin is the reason why we can reverse all of this decline that's been happening. I don't think like dishwashers and airplanes are the end. We're seeing sort of decline in a lot of other things too. And think about how little productivity we had over the pandemic and how crazy things are getting in the world, all the economic chaos that's happening. Bitcoin is our antidote, and all of you in here are part of that being that antidote. Now, what I want to emphasize, is that all coins don't fix anything. All coins don't fix anything. I get it. Now, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've had a lot of students that I've taught and so on. And one of the biggest complaints is, well, I want to get a job in Bitcoin, but I can't find one. But these altcoin companies will hire me. So I kind of have to go there. Well, the reason why those altcoin companies can hire you is because they're rent seekers. They can afford to pay it because they print their own currency. And almost always, if you've ever worked for an altcoin company, they want to pay you in their currency, right? It's okay. We don't want to worry about liquidity, so we will dump a bunch of it on you by paying you in that. They are part of the fiat system. They're just trying to create their own fiat money, and they want more rent-seeking companies. And if you've ever worked for any of these, or if you got a grant from EOS or something to build some project, they don't produce anything because it's all rent-seeking money. They're about as effective as the DMV, right? Like any government organization, it's all rent-seeking. There's no market process there. There's no competition. Whereas if you go to a Bitcoin company, now you have to compete. Now you have to actually meet market needs because there's no subsidization here. There's no rent seeking here. And that's why, even though it's harder, I encourage people to go to Bitcoin because that's actually going to last and you're actually going to provide value. And this is the mindset that I want to encourage all of you to have. It's that Bitcoin sound money mindset. First, provide value. Don't play politics. Don't try to get the right position. Provide value to other people. Give them something that they need or want. And second, have progress as a value. It's not about conserving the current position of the company or whatever. You have to innovate because you have to compete in the marketplace. Make progress, make something better, and not just incrementally better. Fiat money can produce some of that, but make it a quantum leap better. Instead of making blocks 2 megabytes, actually make like a nightly network. That's a quantum leap. Finally, focus on merit. And this happens naturally because the incentives are there in Bitcoin. Whatever is best within the Bitcoin, within the market wins. That's why Bitcoin fixes this problem, because fiat ruins a lot of the things that we see around us. It's tearing down civilization, whereas Bitcoin is building up civilization. And all of you are part of that vanguard of turning this around. Thank you very much.